It's D-Day plus 12, 1944. A sudden channel storm whips the coast of Normandy. Off Omaha Beach lies the convoy carrying the 83rd. Ships break up and run aground. Ashore, the heavy steel landing piers are twisted and ripped apart. And for 3 days and 3 nights, the division rides out the storm, waiting. On D-Day plus 15, the storm subsides. Another 3 days and 3 nights pass before men and equipment of the 83rd Infantry Division finally get ashore and into their assembly area. "24 hours later, the division moves up to relieve the 101st Airborne southwest of Carentan.
They say Normandy is beautiful, but you couldn't prove it by me. I don't think any of our guys, or even the ones that came in before us, noticed it. And the civilians. All I remember is they seemed happy to see us, especially the kids. The one thing I remember about Normandy was the hedgerows, and they were the biggest damned hedges I ever saw. They were everywhere. Around the fields, along the roads. Anywhere you turned, you bumped into one. We took over the positions of the 101st Airborne on the other side of Carentan, around the end of June. Then we attacked. I can remember the day it started. It was the 4th of July. Funny they picked that day. That's one 4th of July none of us will forget. Those hedgerows came in handy for holding ground. The only trouble was the Germans were using them too. I said those hedges were the biggest damned hedges I'd ever seen, and the toughest too. Worse than barbed wire. They were more like a stone wall, only worse. You could go over a stone wall, but you had to go through these hedges. Even our tanks had trouble doing that. We'd go through one, we'd move ahead about 50 yards or so, and there'd be another. It got us. We were fighting a couple of days for a piece of ground the size of a football field. We'd finally take it, move on a few yards, and then start all over again. All the time you had this feeling of being hemmed in. It was like being in a blind alley. You couldn't move. You couldn't see. Those German snipers could see all right. They were usually behind us. I don't know how many guys we lost in those hedgerows. It started raining. That ended our help from the air. That mud gave us almost as much trouble as the Germans. Our tanks and trucks were bogging down in the field. Those little country roads we had to use weren't much better. We were just beginning to get used to it. Then on July 25th, our planes began coming over. They came in waves. It looked like they were using every plane they had. The sky was filled with them. After they finished with the Germans, the going wasn't so tough. We started moving again, and we didn't stop until we were in Brittany. It took us 23 days to get out of Normandy. That was 23 days and nights of steady fighting. They gave us a few days' rest and we started again. We were heading for St. Malo.
In Normandy, it was the foot soldiers. They did most of the work. Now it was up to the artillery. The division's objective was St. Malo and Dinard. Our job was to knock out the fortified lines that stood in its way. Chateauneuf was the first town. We took it and kept right on moving. While our troops were still moving through Chateauneuf to fan out across the peninsula, we were already hitting the next fortified line. We flattened it and kept on moving. It took us 3 days to reach the outskirts of St. Malo. By that time, the Air Force was already pounding the citadel. We set up our guns and pitched in. The next day, our troops started moving into the city. We got into St. Malo all right, but that was only the beginning. There was still plenty of Germans in St. Malo, and they had orders to hold it. The town had to be cleared house by house, street by street. It took us almost a week. We were still fighting in the streets when elements of the division began moving on Dinard on the other side of the estuary. Our patrols were already in the city. They cleared the way. Dinard put us within striking distance of the citadel. Most of St. Malo was ours, but the citadel still held out. The old medieval fortress with its thick walls had resisted repeated aerial attacks and the constant shelling of our biggest guns. The situation called for desperate measures. We fired into the apertures of the fortress. That did it. With St. Malo and Dinard out of the way, we began working on the island of Sezambre. Only our big guns could reach that heavily fortified little island. The Air Force joined in. It wasn't long. General Macon himself went out to accept the surrender. Even before the fall of Sezambre, the division was on the move again. A battalion combat team was fighting its way west to help take the important port of